Well, good morning and welcome to Mission Sunday. This is the exciting part. We get to celebrate one Sunday a year and recognize one of the missionaries we support. We've had the wonderful opportunity to partner with Jim and Allison Poorman over the past 30-some years, and through his ministries, his impact on the world, and his carrying the Word of God. So, I'm not going to steal any of his thunder because I know all this where the skeletons are.
Yeah.
Jim.
Thank you, Phil. All right. Wow, it is so good to be back here with you guys. 30 years. How does that happen? How did that happen? The last time, oh, look at this. This is great. You got a little spot for your water right here. Oh, I love it. I love it. The new technology is amazing in these things. So the last time we were here, it was before COVID. And so a lot has transpired since then for sure. And I will never forget the first time I met with the missions committee here. So it was Eddie and Wilma Stafford, Steve and Jan Huff, Dennis and Sandy Dieterle, Pete and Bev Maybach, Harmon and Judy, Withy. We were all in Stafford's living room, and that was 1991. Man, yes. And so from day one, they treated me and eventually Allison really like family and became a spiritual family to us. So fresh out of college at Bowling Green, my parents were not Christians, and they were not pleased with me wanting to go into full-time ministry to reach college students. And I remember them telling me, like, why do you have to be so extreme with this? Like, can't you just get a job, like get a normal job, and just do this kind of like on the side in the evenings or that kind of thing? And so at the time, there were some guys that were really mentoring me and kind of discipling me and giving me a lot of input. And my parents helped out a lot with my college. And so they said, you know, we really feel like maybe you should honor them in that. And so I went out for a year and worked as an art director for an advertising agency. And I was an art major, and so I took their advice, my parents' advice in that. And I think what their hope was is that once I get into this new career, you know, and that's happening, that my desire to be on campus and reach college students, that would kind of wane. And this full-time ministry silliness thing would end, you know. But that kind of backfired on them, because what was happening is I got to lead some of the guys I worked with at the ad agency to Jesus. And then as soon as I was done, I would get right out on campus. And so I was there all night till 2 in the morning. And so my desire to be on campus just grew stronger. Because I thought, you know, there's 8 hours where I'm working at this agency. I would love to just be out on campus. And so it was just getting stronger and stronger. And so I told my parents, sorry, I need to do this. And so at that point, you know, being a college church, I had to go out and raise financial support, like have a team of people give to me, give to us to be able to do ministry full time. And so I wasn't brought up in a Christian church, so I had no church background, no real contacts. And then my parents, who were not excited about this, put every roadblock possible in the way. And so I stayed at their place in Cleveland. Go Browns. It usually gets a laugh, for sure. And my parents would constantly have like projects lined up for me to work on around the house. They told me I was not allowed to talk to anybody that they knew, like any type of relationship. And they told me also, like, this is a really bad decision. This is stupid. You're not going to be able to have a family. God is not going to provide in this way, and it's just not a real job. is what they told me. So, meanwhile, in God's providence, he led me to wonderful, older, seasoned Jesus followers that 100% backed me in that and wanting to go and follow Christ. And so they believed in me, and they knew that the college campus, like me being on that college campus 24/7, telling people about Jesus was really important. And so that's why this church family became a place of hope and encouragement and inspiration for me. Because those older believers that were in that room, were telling me that this is a good thing that you're doing, and we need this. And so we just want to say thank you to so many of you that have given to us financially. You have prayed for us. You have loved us. You have thought about our needs ahead of time, and we are just so grateful, so thankful. And we would not be where we're at today if we did not have believers like you guys behind us. So thank you. Thank you. So you guys are awesome. So this is our family now, okay? And we have been in ministry, like I said, since 1991. And so we have this incredible group of people all over the country that have supported us to be doing this. Most of those incredible people are in Ohio, of course, because all roads lead to Ohio. And so we've got 4 boys and then the little girlie there. So here's our 4 boys. So they've all presently played or are playing college football. So here's a few of those. So that's Ty, who is at Wisconsin Whitewater now. All right, that's Luke, our oldest, and here he was playing for Mary Hardin Baylor in Texas. This is when he was at Mount Union. We have quarterbacks all over. And so this is Cole, who is playing football at Heidelberg up there in Tiffin. And this is Vaughn, our youngest, who just signed with Weber International in Florida, so he's going to be playing there. So that's the boys, okay? Now this is our little girl. And so we adopted her. She was born 4 months early at 1 pound, 15 ounces, and she eventually lost 15 of those ounces and was down to 1 pound. But this is her now, on the right. That's her now with her brother. And so, yes, just an incredible story. That's a very long story of how that happened. But a birth mom who didn't know she was pregnant and gave birth to her within an hour. She was a triathlete, and so at that point had no idea that she was pregnant and was not ready to be a mom. And so she picked us and placed her in our family. And so just incredible. So the way this all started is when I first got to Bowling Green, my goal was really just to kind of party and play hockey. Okay? It was not to become a pastor and reach the world for Jesus. That really was not at all the plan. So here's what happened is I met some guys my freshman year who were Jesus followers, and I was totally impressed with their lives. Okay? They were humble, they were real, they were authentic, but I had never met anybody who was like serious about following God. And so I remember walking into one of the guys' dorm rooms, and he had a number of Bible verses on the wall, and on his wall, like on these postcards. And I was like, what's all this about? And he said, well, those are a number, like there's certain character areas that I feel I really need to grow in, that God has really shown me. And these are Bible verses that kind of focus on each of those things, and I'm memorizing those verses. And I think about those throughout the day, And then there was another group of guys we're in college at Bowling Green, and they would get up at 6 a.m. and they would pray together. And I was like, what is going on? And who are you people? But I was really impressed with that. I also saw them continually having just really great conversations with people that were really far from God. Doing it in a way that wasn't pushy, but they would ask questions, they were curious, and so I saw them leading people to Jesus. So that's what I saw. That's what I thought every believer was about. You follow Jesus, you're humble, you tell people about him, you memorize scripture, you pray. That was those 20-year-old guys that I was learning from. And so eventually what happened was I was involved with their church, their group. They started inviting me, and I would continually tell them, I'm busy, I have things going on, I can't make it. But eventually I started going with them and hearing the gospel 50 times. It finally sunk in. And I said, I'm going to follow Jesus with all I've got. And so got involved with their college ministry, which was pretty small at the time. And then eventually, I was leading that college ministry. Okay. So I had tons of friends who were not Christians. All the guys I played hockey with, that was my circle of friendships and relationships were unbelievers. So my first thought was, well, if I'm leading this now, I really want to make this an environment where all my friends who would never step foot into a church or some kind of Christian meeting where they can feel comfortable and get their questions asked. Or get their questions answered, I should say, or just dialogue about the things they were really struggling with. And so I wanted it to be a place where spiritually curious, spiritually restless, spiritually confused students could come and get their questions answered. So eventually, that smallish student group ended up having about 12 other guys that wanted to be pastors. Okay? And so I knew I had worked myself out of a job, so to speak, and discipleship was really important to us as a ministry and as a church there on campus. And so the cool thing was that none of those guys were believers before they came to Bowling Green. Okay? And so you can just imagine how some of our parents took this, thinking we send our kid to a state school, and now 4 years later, they're all about Jesus and they want to reach the world for Jesus. What is going on here? And so we always joked it's kind of like a state-supported seminary is what we're doing here. And so really simply, God was doing something there. And eventually, all those, that group of guys that I was mentoring and discipling, they went out and they started churches all over Ohio in the Midwest. And so that's what we now call the H2O network. And so University of Cincinnati, Kent State, Ohio U, Toledo, Youngstown State, Wright State, Western Michigan, University of Buffalo, Michigan, Ohio State, all over the place. And all those roads lead back to Bowling Green, Ohio. And many of those men and women and our staff members that lead those college churches now, I can remember the first day they came in to one of our meetings, or I met them on campus and they didn't know Jesus. So that is really exciting. So now there's actually thousands of college students in Ohio that are being reached every single week as a result of what we did and what God did there at Bowling Green. And Mount Zion was a huge supporter of that. In fact, when we first started a lot of our small groups, we were using Pastor Larry's, all of his thesis work and the stuff that he had done on small groups. And we were using those for our small groups on campus, in dorms, and man, just some really cool stuff. So this is part of the H2O network here. This is just some of the leaders from the network of those churches on those campuses, okay? So what happened then at Bowling Green, even beyond that, was it started to grow even larger. So we went from this small, obscure group to a group that was absolutely like exploding. Tons of unchurched, non-Christian kids coming to Jesus. So eventually there was no room that was big enough for us on campus aside from the grand ballroom in the Union. So this is where they have church now. So that's a theater that is in the Union, and they outgrew that. They had too many coming, so now they have to meet in the ballroom, which is the largest meeting space on campus there at Bowling Green. And so then what happened is we had so many that were coming to Jesus, they then wanted to either stay there and continue reaching college students or go and plant other churches. So then what we did is they bought a church downtown. So Bowling Green now has the campus service in the Union, which is packed, and then they bought a church right downtown in the middle of where all the bars are, and we have a community and college church there too. And so it's right on Main Street there. And so now you have families that are coming as a result. So now it's campus and community right there. So really cool things that are happening there. So like I said, I had worked myself out of a job on purpose. And then our goal was, let's take what we're doing on this small campus and let's go and do that in a larger space. And so our goal was, can we do a citywide thing and then college students also? And so we wanted to make the gospel accessible to college students and people in the city. And so we started looking at other cities. We looked at Toronto, we looked at Amsterdam. And so Amsterdam and the Netherlands, you think, why there? The goal was, we're like, if we can start a church there, we can start a church anywhere. And the other thing was, we knew that the young people there, it is not uncommon for most of the young people to speak between 3 and 5 languages fluently. They can flip from English to one right away. And so we thought, if we can reach students there, they have multiple languages under their belt, and so then they can move to other areas and plant churches there. So our church, our Amsterdam church there now is all led by Dutch nationals. And those were students from Bowling Green, again, and Colorado State, who partnered together and went over there. So you can see how this stuff just starts to explode and expand, and it's just incredible to watch. So at the same time, our national headquarters for our college ministry, Reliant, moved down to Orlando, and so they had asked my wife and I to consider moving there and doing something in Orlando that was very similar to Bowling Green, but a citywide and in a college outreach thing. So get this, there's more than 90,000 college students in Orlando. So Full Sail, Seminole State, Rollins College, and then UCF has 72,000 students. Okay, so when I heard that, I was like, let's go there. That's great. For a hockey player, going to Orlando wasn't really that exciting. I know people say, oh, you know, suffering for Jesus in Orlando, but I really was not super into it. But when I saw this campus, I mean, look at that. That's an aerial view. 72,000 students there. This is one of the dorms at UCF. Look at that. That is ridiculous. I mean, that looks like an Embassy Suites. And remember the barracks that we used to go to, you know? So for the amount of money they pay, you know, at least they've got a place like this. But that's one of the dorms there at UCF. So we moved down there with family. with no family there. We had no family there, and we were 7 months pregnant with the twins. My wife's right there, yep. Really easy. Yeah, she just did this. From behind, you could barely tell. We took a picture that just before, yes, but from the side, it was, I don't know, it was out there. So, but man, being away from our family that are all up in Cleveland and Tiffin area, it was really difficult. But that goal of reaching thousands of students, that really drove us. So let me tell you about what's happening recently there in Orlando. And so we have a younger crowd that's a part of our church. But in the midst of that, we were meeting at the time. First, we met at a country western bar for years called 8 Seconds, which if you're into bull riding, if you can last 8 seconds, you're good. But that was the name of the place. It was painted like a cow, a huge cow. That's where we met. Then we moved to a place called the Abbey, and the Abbey is this beautiful, performing arts type thing, center, and it's downstairs of this high rise. And so there was a gentleman that lived up in the penthouse in the high rise. Really, that's not our crowd, but 73 years old, started coming to our church. Saw some signs, saw people going in there, was really curious. And so 4 or 5 months later, after hearing the gospel, he comes to Jesus. Okay? So he gets baptized. His name's Roger. And when Roger gets baptized, he tells me and one of the other pastors, hey, I had this vision right after I got out of the water. And he said, I had this vision that God is going to give us a home downtown, and I just feel like there's a property somewhere, and so I'm going to find that. And I'm just thinking, well, good luck with that, because there's no just dirt sitting around empty there in Orlando. And months later, he finds it. He finds this abandoned church. It had been abandoned for about 5 years, and it was all boarded up, had stained glass windows, gorgeous stained glass windows, which were on the floor. And so he says, here's what I'm going to do. I found this property. It's got a church building, a fellowship hall, and a bunch of classrooms. I'll take out all the classrooms, and so I'll buy the property. I'll give you the church building and the fellowship hall, and then I'll sell the rest of the property to a home builder, and we'll build an entire neighborhood right on top of the church. And then I'll give you $250,000 on top of that to start renovating the church. So that's what he did. Incredible. And so this is the site rendering. So these are the homes that are going up right around our church building now. So you can see them on the bottom there. Those are just kind of some renderings, and then the townhomes. And so if you can see up there on the right-hand side, small, you see our little logo. That's where our church building is, and then the neighborhood is all around us. And when I say it's tight, it is really tight. 3 acres, and there's 9 single-family homes, and then another 40 units of townhomes. And so if we just open the doors, they're going to hear all of my sermons. It's great. But so here's what we did with the property. And so my wife and I, years ago, we were on Trading Spaces. Remember that show? And so we know that if you've got 4 walls, you can make it. I mean, you can do anything with it. So that was the interior right there. And I'm going to get into some of these pictures in just a little bit and show you a bunch of before and after pictures, because we like before and after pictures, right? So here's what we wanted to do and what we're doing. We wanted to take this space that God had given us and make it a third place. And here's what I mean by that. Let me explain what I mean by third place. For decades and decades, Americans have largely spent time in two places. So the first place is home. The second place is work. Now, typically, like in a small town or a village, a city, there's a third place where a lot of people would go to relax, unwind with friends, socialize. So it may have ended up being like the local bowling alley or the local tavern or bar, you know, like Cheers, where you walk in and everybody knows your name. For a while, it was malls. Those are going by the wayside. The mall, for some of you in past generations, maybe there was a soda shop that was kind of in the center where you guys all hung out. Okay, you're thinking about those memories right now. But those spaces have become increasingly more fragmented and specialized. So we want to get back to that feel. And some cities are recognizing this lack of connectedness. And so in Orlando, they've started to break down the city into all these different districts to try to make it feel smaller so you can actually connect with people on a much more meaningful level. So we're in the middle of this district called the Milk District. All right, so now I'm going to give you some before and after slides, because, you know, have you guys ever watched like HGTV? Okay, so you watch one of those shows and you've probably noticed they don't do a commercial in between anymore. They just go right into the next one and you see this awful property and you get hooked again. And you have to watch another half hour to find out how do they make this look decent. So this is why I've got a bunch of before and afters, because I know they're so satisfying, right? Okay, so this is the sanctuary, and those are the stained glass that are just laying on the floor there. Okay, so that's what it looks like now. All right. These are all sanctuary pictures, and you can see we put the stained glass back up, and that was Roger who bought the property with the previous owners. He said, there's one condition. I will only buy this property if you replace and put all the stained glass back up. So they put all that back up for us. All right. So this is our back room. This is like a kind of a green room type area where bands, people that come in and perform, we're going to have local arts and theater and that kind of stuff. So that was the before picture. There's an after of that same space. There's us tearing it all apart, and it was disgusting. It was nasty, and this is the after picture there. So that's what it looks like now. So, ooh, I heard some oohs. Yeah. So this is a spot, and this is really important. I want to talk a little bit about before we go to the next slide on this, Julie. So our hope and prayer is that this space that we created will become a third place, and that's a space that we call the living room, okay? So we divided the sanctuary, and together, my wife and I, we were like, let's build this place where anybody in the neighborhood, like when they get up in the morning, would say, I'm going over there, I'm going to have a coffee, I've got a business meeting planned there, I'm going to read, study, watch a game, host a book club, play some board games, have some craft beer, hang out. We're going to offer concerts, acoustic gigs, all that kind of stuff. And so we wanted to make that space a space where anybody in the neighborhood would just go and consider that theirs. So here's what we did with that. So that's what it looks like now. So you can see the frame for the wall. If we go back to the one before, you can see, so, and now go ahead. Yeah, so this now becomes that space, and we'll have espresso in there. We've got flat screens all over. We've got a killer sound system in there. But really the goal is for people in that neighborhood to walk over there and spend time consistently in the living room. And I'm going to make it really clear to everybody in the neighborhood, like, this is your space. This is your space. So these are a couple more living room pictures from different angles. And you can see there's our stage space in the corner, and just places to hang out. And again, it's so close. So we also have, one of our pastors has a degree in counseling. He's a licensed mental health counselor. So we also added counseling spaces, and it's called Deeper Waters. Goes with the H2O theme, right? And that's right there too. So we put that space in, and all of that was totally open before also. And so now we've got an outreach to the community there through all the counseling services that they offer. Now here's the exterior. You can see it was kind of, I don't know, moldy. I don't know what the word is there. So this is what it's looking like now. There's the front. So we're getting there. We're getting there. It might be one more, Julie. I don't know if there is. Nope. Okay, thank you. So, we've got a little more work to do, and we'll be finishing all that within the next probably 6 months or so. So I want to finish with some practicals that we have been discussing for our community, and maybe we can hold off on that slide for right now, okay? And this 100% applies to you guys too, with your location and Jesus' call on all of our lives, is that we can learn from Jesus. And the best thing is that none of us have to be Jesus to be about these things that I'm going to mention. We're all capable to do each of these things in regard to loving our neighbors. And so that's this context that we've been talking about recently as a community. How can we love our neighbors? And so what Jesus modeled, can we do that? It's well within reach for us. So Matthew 22, 36 through 40, it says this: love the Lord your God, we all know this, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commitments. So we've been thinking a lot about and discussing together, what does it look like and feel like to love our neighbor practically? And so these are some of the things that we've observed with Jesus in his interactions with others that ran across his path. The first is that he noticed his neighbor. He noticed his neighbor. If we can become noticers, what a massive difference that can make. Just noticing what's going on with others. Second, Jesus knew the name of his neighbor. Taking the time to know someone's name is so important. Sometimes when I'm reading or studying, I'll go to a Starbucks that's close to us. And every time I go in there, the same young people that work there that have been trained, to, like, just interact and that, you can tell that they have been trained, but they never remember my name. Never. Never. And it's really interesting because I know them, I know their names and all that, but they're always like, and what is your name again? And so it's really obvious that they're really not paying attention. They're really not listening. They're just kind of pretending to be authentic, which is kind of the cool thing in a coffee shop. Be really authentic. So we need to be authentic. And we need to remember people's names. It's a very small thing, but it's important. And then Jesus prayed for his neighbors. He was consistently going to his Father and was burdened for the people that lived around him. Their eternal well-being, it was on his mind. So in John 4, he looks out at these fields below them and he says, don't you all have a saying that it's 4 months until the harvest? Well, I'm telling you, right now, there's a harvest. And if you look out there and notice, it could be brought in right now. And he's talking to Jews. He's also talking to Samaritans there, most likely, that were listening also. the ones that the Jews that didn't even associate with. And so his point was, for all of you, when I reach all of you, this is what you could become. And I'm going to finish with that. Jesus initiated then with his neighbor. He'd lock eyes, he'd approach people, he'd interact with them, and sometimes he'd ask them directly, what do you need? And his interactions were often laced with questions, just questions of curiosity. Wasn't making statements, bold statements. A lot of times it was just starting the relationship and the friendship with questions. And then next, Jesus ate with his neighbor, and this was huge. Jesus shared a table with people that made the religious heat lose their minds. They pulled out Deuteronomy 21 on Jesus, accusing him of being the rebellious son who eats and drinks with sinners and gluttons. That's exactly what he did. Instead of shunning them, he spent time with them around a dinner table, eating with them. So the self-righteous Jews were right. He was spending time with sinners and drunkards because he loved them. What an example, what a model for us that we should spend time with people who are far from God. And what helped Jesus do this is this last point here. Jesus believed in what his neighbor could become. So he sees someone like Matthew, the tax collector, who is stealing from his own people and extorting money and is considered a total scumbag. He's shunned for being a traitor and stealing from his own people. And he selects. He notices him, calls him by name, and then calls him to follow him, and then says, we're going to have a party, and we're going to have some time together, and we're going to have it at his house. All of these things probably made the other disciples like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? Jesus saw who Matthew the tax collector could become. And so I think our prayer needs to be that we see people the way Jesus did. Thank God that Jesus saw us for what we would become, not for who we were. Thank God that he saw us that way, lost, confused, rebellious, and independent. Honestly, we were sinners who in a lot of ways didn't really care what he thought. Or we just thought our own way was better. So this principle of just believing in what people can become as God gets a hold of them is so important for us. So again, we wanted to say thank you again to your community. Like, you guys have just been incredible to us and loved us, and we are so grateful. We would love to meet with you afterwards. We've got a table outside where there's some more information just on that building project and what we're doing. Our website, it's H2OChurch.org. All that to say, we wouldn't be where we're at. You wouldn't have seen all those pictures of thousands of students that are being affected in the Midwest and down in Florida now, if it wasn't for people behind the scenes that believed in us and gave to us so we could be out there. So thank you to all of you. Thanks. Tell you what, as you guys, as the full band comes up here, let me pray. The rock and rollers. Oh yeah. Let me pray for you guys and for all of us. God, I'm just so thankful to be in a place where there's multi-generations here. I see young people over here. I see other people that have followed you for 50 years, for more than that. When we see faithfulness and zeal and long-term stability and sustainability in a room, it is a beautiful thing. And so we thank you for that. We thank you that you saw us for what we could become. That you didn't give up and say, nope, forget it. Instead, you invited us to your table, and ultimately we get to celebrate that together for eternity, a table with you and fellowship with you. So thank you for the opportunity just to worship you together, kind of a foretaste of what heaven will be like when we're in your presence. And we pray this in your name. Amen.